Picture this, a fifth-round rookie quarterback literally walks out of team headquarters while his head coach screams down the hallway, demanding he return. No negotiation. No warning. Just complete organizational meltdown in real time. This isn't your typical NFL drama. This is the Cleveland Browns achieving new levels of dysfunction that could define their franchise for years. What you're about to witness is how a single confrontation between Kevin Stefanski and Shedeur Sanders exploded into what insiders are calling organizational Armageddon. Stick around because the details of what actually happened behind closed doors will shock you, and the implications for Cleveland's season are absolutely catastrophic. Welcome back to the channel where we break down the NFL's most explosive stories. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into what might be the most unprecedented quarterback controversy in recent memory. The Cleveland Browns, a franchise already synonymous with dysfunction, just reached a new low that has league executives watching in horror and fascination. This isn't just about a coach-player disagreement. This is about fundamental philosophical collisions, organizational power struggles, and the complete implosion of what was supposed to be Cleveland's most promising season in years. We're going to examine exactly what led to this explosion, analyze the heated confrontation that witnesses describe as unprecedented, and explore why this could be the beginning of the end for multiple careers in Cleveland. By the end of this video, you'll understand why one AFC executive told me this situation represents organizational malpractice and why the ripple effects of this confrontation will be felt throughout the entire NFL. Let's break down how everything went wrong. Here's what really happened during that fateful morning meeting that destroyed the Browns season before it even began. Multiple sources inside the organization have painted a picture of confrontation so intense, so unprecedented, that veteran coaches with decades of experience say they've never witnessed anything comparable. The incident erupted during what should have been a routine offensive installation meeting. Kevin Stefanski, known for his methodical approach and controlled demeanor, was reviewing third down packages with the quarterbacks when everything went sideways. According to witnesses, Stefanski began questioning Sanders' execution against the scout defense, not unusual for any coach working with a rookie. But what happened next crossed every line of professional conduct. Sources describe the exchange escalating rapidly. Stefanski's criticism became increasingly pointed, his voice rising with each comment. Sanders, who had been dealing with what he perceived as systematic undermining for weeks, finally reached his breaking point. The moment that changed everything? Sanders stood up, removed his playbook wristband, and declared, "I'm done with this." But here's where it gets truly explosive. As Sanders headed for the door, Stefanski followed him into the hallway. What witnesses describe next is unprecedented in professional football, a veteran head coach literally shouting at a rookie quarterback while the entire building watched in stunned silence. Position coaches desperately attempted intervention, but Stefanski was beyond reason. One assistant coach, speaking on condition of anonymity, told me, "I've been coaching for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like it." Kevin completely lost control. The veins in his neck were bulging, his hands were shaking with rage, and he was screaming demands that Sanders return immediately. The most chilling detail? Sanders never stopped walking. He never acknowledged the coach's demands, never turned around, never showed any indication he heard the volcanic eruption behind him. He simply continued toward the parking lot while position coaches, players, and front office personnel watched speechlessly from windows and doorways. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Players gathered in the parking lot, some attempting phone calls to Sanders, others simply stunned into silence. Offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt sprinted outside attempting intervention but arrived moments too late, watching Sanders' car disappear down the street. Inside the facility, the aftermath was equally chaotic. Stefanski convened an emergency team meeting, delivering what sources describe as a scorched earth directive. He allegedly declared that anyone who couldn't commit completely should follow Sanders out the door, that the organization would move forward with or without individual players. The locker room division became immediately apparent. Receivers who had developed chemistry with Sanders expressed visible frustration. One prominent pass catcher allegedly confronted Stefanski directly, questioning coaching decisions that contributed to the situation. Defensive players attempted maintaining neutrality while privately acknowledging concerns about leadership stability. This wasn't just a coach-player disagreement, this was the complete breakdown of organizational hierarchy, professional conduct, and team unity. The confrontation revealed fractures that had been building for weeks, and the explosion was so severe that repair might be impossible. What you witnessed wasn't a spontaneous eruption, it was the inevitable result of weeks of systematic tension that had been building like pressure in a volcano. To understand why Sanders walked out, you need to understand the pattern of treatment that sources describe as deliberately antagonistic and systematically undermining. The friction began immediately following Cleveland's embarrassing loss to the Rams. Despite Sanders completing 70% of his passes and generating 3 touchdowns, statistics that would normally earn praise for any rookie quarterback, he faced disproportionate criticism during film sessions. Sources inside the organization reveal that Stefanski highlighted every incompletion, every missed protection adjustment, every question audible while minimizing positive contributions. One offensive player, speaking anonymously, claimed, "Coach basically blamed Shedeur for everything while protecting everyone else. It felt personal, not professional. We'd watch film of a perfect touchdown pass, and somehow Kevin would find fault with the pre-snap read or the footwork. Meanwhile, other guys making obvious mistakes got constructive feedback." The practice repetition distribution created additional controversy that insiders described as intentional disrespect. Despite ownership's clear preference for establishing Sanders as the franchise cornerstone, remember, they traded up to select him, Stefanski reportedly continued splitting first-team opportunities equally with backup quarterbacks. Sometimes Sanders received fewer quality repetitions than journeyman veterans who everyone knew wouldn't be starting. This wasn't about competition or development. Sources claim this was about sending a message: you're not special despite your draft position, despite your talent, despite the organizational investment. Sanders interpreted this as systematic undermining designed to force failure, and honestly, it's hard to argue with that assessment. The public criticism represented the final provocation. Following the Rams' defeat, Stefanski's press conference comments targeted Sanders specifically without mentioning him by name. Young quarterbacks must learn that winning requires more than individual statistics, he stated pointedly. Leadership means accepting responsibility, elevating teammates, executing game plans rather than freelancing. Everyone understood the target. National media interpreted the comments as a direct shot at the rookie quarterback. Sanders supposedly watched those clips repeatedly, growing increasingly frustrated with what he perceived as public scapegoating for organizational failures. But here's what makes this situation truly explosive: the philosophical collision at its core. Stefanski embodies old-school coaching principles: hierarchical authority, earned respect, systematic development, paying dues. Sanders represents the new generation of athlete empowerment, immediate impact expectations, brand consciousness, unwillingness to accept traditional limitations. Neither approach is necessarily wrong, but compatibility becomes impossible when positions become entrenched. Stefanski saw Sanders as an entitled rookie who needed humbling. Sanders saw Stefanski as a threatened coach trying to maintain control through intimidation. The breaking point was inevitable. When you combine systematic undermining with public criticism and philosophical incompatibility, explosion becomes unavoidable. What happened in that meeting room wasn't spontaneous combustion, it was the predictable result of organizational mismanagement that had been building for weeks. The tragedy is that both sides had valid points, but pride and stubbornness prevented any possibility of resolution. Kevin Stefanski's subsequent press conference was supposed to be damage control. Instead, it became a masterclass in barely contained fury that revealed just how deeply this situation had shattered his composure and authority. What the public witnessed was the controlled version of the volcanic eruption that sources say occurred behind closed doors. Let me break down what Stefanski actually said, because his words were remarkably revealing despite attempted professionalism. "We've done everything to support him," he stated, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed with barely contained rage. "Everything within reason, accommodating his transition, managing expectations, creating opportunities. But at some point, you have to put the team first. That's non-negotiable." The translation was crystal clear. Sanders had crossed an unforgivable line. The relationship was fractured beyond repair. This wasn't disappointment. This was betrayal from Stefanski's perspective. But here's where it gets really interesting. When reporters pressed regarding Sanders' specific grievances, Stefanski's carefully constructed diplomatic facade briefly cracked. "Grievances," he responded, voice rising incrementally. "We're discussing professional football, not therapy sessions. Every player faces criticism. Every quarterback endures scrutiny. Champions embrace accountability rather than abandoning responsibility when challenged." Watch the footage again. His knuckles whiten as he grips the podium edges. The diplomatic mask slips, revealing genuine fury beneath. One reporter in attendance told me, "I've covered this team for 8 years, and I've never seen Kevin like that." He was vibrating with anger. Sources inside the organization revealed that what we saw publicly was nothing compared to the private explosion. Behind closed doors, Stefanski allegedly unleashed a tirade that included expletives, voice cracking with rage, hands trembling as he addressed the team. One assistant coach described it as 20 years of coaching frustration erupting simultaneously. The press conference revealed something crucial about Stefanski's psychological state. He felt personally betrayed. This wasn't just about losing a player. This was about his entire coaching philosophy being rejected by a rookie. His identity as a leader, his credibility with players, his reputation throughout the league, everything was under attack. But here's what makes this truly fascinating from a psychological perspective. Stefanski's reaction revealed his own insecurities. A confident coach handles player departures professionally. A secure leader doesn't need to publicly justify every decision. The volcanic response suggested that Sanders' rejection hit deeper than professional disappointment. It struck at Stefanski's core identity. The most telling moment came when he declared, "If individuals can't accept that fundamental principle, then difficult decisions become necessary." This wasn't about Sanders anymore. This was Stefanski drawing a line in the sand for every player in that locker room. "Submit to my authority or face consequences." The problem? Authority that requires constant assertion isn't really authority at all. True leadership doesn't need to be defended through press conferences and public ultimatums. The fact that Stefanski felt compelled to justify his position so aggressively revealed how much power he'd actually lost. What we witnessed wasn't strength, it was desperation. A coach watching his authority crumble in real time, trying to reassert control through public displays of fury. The press conference didn't restore his credibility, it exposed how completely Sanders' departure had shattered his leadership. While Stefanski was publicly melting down, behind the scenes, the Cleveland Browns organization was experiencing complete systemic failure. What happened next reveals just how unprepared this franchise was for crisis management and how quickly professional organizations can descend into absolute chaos. Jimmy Haslam's reaction was immediate and volcanic. Sources describe the owner going ballistic upon learning Sanders had departed, immediately contacting Stefanski and demanding explanations through what witnesses described as a phone conversation so intense that people in adjacent offices could hear the screaming. Think about the psychology here. Haslam had personally championed Sanders' selection, proclaimed him the franchise savior, and watched his investment literally drive away from team headquarters. One front office source told me, Jimmy was screaming through the phone so loud that Kevin had to hold it away from his ear. The owner, who'd backed this kid completely, just watched him disappear. The power dynamic shifted dramatically in that moment. Stefanski's authority wasn't just being challenged by a player anymore, it was being questioned by ownership. Haslam allegedly demanded that Stefanski fix the situation immediately or face consequences, completely undermining the coach's position with players and staff. General Manager Andrew Barry found himself navigating an impossible scenario. He'd advocated for Sanders' selection despite scouting department reservations. He'd supported Stefanski's culture-building efforts. Now both positions proved untenable simultaneously. Sources indicate Barry spent the afternoon frantically attempting damage control, calling Sanders representatives, meeting with Stefanski, updating ownership, and managing media inquiries. One front office member perfectly captured the chaos. Andrew looked like he aged 5 years in 5 hours. This wasn't a contingency anyone had planned for. We had protocols for injuries, trades, even arrests. Nobody planned for a quarterback literally walking out during a meeting. The ripple effects were immediate and devastating. Assistant coaches began updating resumes, anticipating potential changes. Players started calculating trade possibilities if the situation deteriorated further. Front office personnel began documenting decisions to protect individual reputations. The self-preservation instincts overtook collective goals. But here's what makes this truly explosive: the contractual implications. Sanders remains under rookie contract and cannot simply quit without consequences. If he refuses to return, Cleveland could pursue fines, suspensions, potentially voiding guarantees. However, such hardball tactics risk permanent relationship destruction and negative publicity. Conversely, if the Browns capitulate entirely, Stefanski's authority evaporates permanently. Every player recognizes that the coach backed down when challenged, setting a catastrophic precedent for organizational discipline. The timing couldn't be worse. Cleveland faces division rival Pittsburgh on Sunday, a game requiring absolute focus, complete unity, and organizational alignment. Instead, chaos reigns supreme. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz reportedly told his staff, "Prepare like normal while everything burns around us." League executives observed the situation with fascination and horror. One NFC general manager stated confidentially, "This is exactly why quarterback evaluation extends beyond physical tools. You're drafting personalities, not just players." Cleveland's making every mistake possible. The Browns became a cautionary tale discussed throughout league circles, an example of organizational malpractice that everyone seeks to avoid. As we reach the climax of this organizational disaster, the resolution scenarios facing Cleveland are all catastrophic. There's no good outcome here, only varying degrees of damage that will haunt this franchise for years to come. Behind the scenes, desperate negotiations continue with positions so entrenched that compromise seems impossible. Sanders' agent reportedly presented demands including a guaranteed starting position, increased input regarding play calling, and a public apology from Stefanski. The coach allegedly responded with a counterproposal. Sanders returns immediately, apologizes to the team, and accepts whatever role the coaching staff determines. The gulf between these positions reveals the fundamental problem: neither side can back down without losing everything they believe they stand for. Stefanski's entire coaching identity relies on organizational discipline and hierarchical respect. Capitulating to rookie quarterback demands obliterates his foundational principles and destroys his credibility with assistants and veterans throughout the league. Sanders is equally entrenched psychologically. As a fifth-round selection who proved doubters wrong and earned his starting opportunity through exceptional performance, he refuses to accept what he perceives as systematic disrespect. Every criticism feels personal given pre-draft skepticism. Walking away represents the ultimate declaration: I deserve better than this treatment. But here's what makes this truly explosive: the competitive implications are devastating regardless of resolution. Even if Sanders returns tomorrow, the trust has evaporated, chemistry is shattered, and focus is fractured. Opposing defenses smell blood and recognize organizational vulnerability. Pittsburgh's defensive coordinator allegedly told his players, "They're imploding. We just need to stay patient and let dysfunction destroy them." The psychological damage extends beyond immediate participants. Players throughout the NFL are watching intently, recognizing broader implications for rookie leverage and coaching authority. If Sanders successfully forces organizational change through departure, it establishes unprecedented precedent. If Stefanski maintains authority despite ownership pressure, it reinforces coaching autonomy. Consider the career-defining stakes for both men. For Sanders, success means establishing unprecedented rookie leverage and demonstrating supreme confidence. Failure means being labeled problematic, immature, and uncoachable, a reputation that follows players throughout their careers. One AFC scout noted, "This follows him regardless. Either he's courageously principled or impossibly difficult. No middle ground exists." Stefanski faces equally high stakes. Backing down destroys credibility permanently. Standing firm risks termination if ownership sides with Sanders. The coach who built his reputation on culture and systematic development watches everything crumbling spectacularly. Sources indicate Stefanski told Confidence, "I'd rather get fired with integrity than survive through capitulation." The broader organizational dysfunction extends beyond immediate personalities. Cleveland's pattern of quarterback mismanagement continues despite different names, coaches, and systems. Something fundamental appears broken within the organizational DNA, an inability to maintain stability, develop talent, or create sustainable success. As resolution remains elusive, one league insider perfectly summarized the situation. If Shedeur Sanders doesn't return soon, this isn't just a quarterback controversy anymore. This could define the Browns' entire season. Hell, it might define the franchise for years. When your fifth-round rookie quarterback literally walks out and your head coach publicly explodes, you're not recovering quickly from that. What we've witnessed here isn't just another NFL controversy, it's a masterclass in organizational self-destruction that will be studied for years to come. The Cleveland Browns have achieved something truly remarkable. They've managed to implode before their season even reached October, turning what should have been their most promising year into an existential crisis that threatens everyone's career. Let's recap the key points that led to this disaster. First, the explosive confrontation that shattered professional boundaries when Stefanski literally chased Sanders down a hallway while the entire building watched. Second, the weeks of systematic undermining that created an impossible situation for a rookie quarterback trying to establish himself. Third, Stefanski's public meltdown that revealed his complete loss of control and authority. Fourth, the organizational chaos that exposed Cleveland's complete lack of crisis management. And finally, the impossible resolution scenarios that guarantee catastrophic damage regardless of outcome. The most tragic part? This was entirely preventable. Professional football demands organizational alignment, clear authority, and unified purpose. Cleveland demonstrates the opposite: power struggles, philosophical divisions, and individual agendas superseding collective goals. Even the most talented roster becomes irrelevant amid such dysfunction. Here's what happens next. Whether through reconciliation, termination, or trade, resolution will arrive eventually, but the scars remain permanent. Trust has been broken, relationships severed, credibility destroyed. The Browns are beginning another rebuild before their current one concluded, continuing the endless cycle of dysfunction that prevents sustainable success. The league watches with horror and fascination, grateful for avoiding similar circumstances while recognizing universal vulnerabilities. This situation transcends Cleveland toward a league-wide philosophical battle about authority, respect, and the changing dynamics between coaches and players in modern football. I want to hear your thoughts on this unprecedented situation. Do you think Shedeur Sanders was justified in walking out, or should he have handled this through proper channels? Was Kevin Stefanski's reaction that of a strong leader maintaining discipline or a coach who completely lost control? Drop your opinion in the comments below. I read every single one and respond to as many as I can. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell because this story is far from over. I'll be following every development and bringing you exclusive insights as this situation continues to unfold. Thanks for watching, and remember, in the NFL, the drama off the field is often more intense than anything that happens on Sunday. This Cleveland situation proves that sometimes reality is stranger than fiction.